Okay, we'll start here. I was living in Seattle about 1981, 81, and I bought this book. I was living and working in Seattle. I bought this book on how to build a house, a dome house. Okay. This was around 1981. This book probably copyright mid 70s. Let's see if I can get to the back of it. Okay, here's the back cover. Right here. It's made up of 4 hexagons. There's one here, there's one on the top, and 2 other ones make up the side. Then there's 3 trapezoids. But I'm very good at arithmetic and scaling. This house was supposed to be 32 feet wide. Because I'm good at arithmetic and scaling, let me get out of this. And now I'll get to my other display. Okay, here it is, my interpretation. Okay, we have ice fishing in upstate New York, specifically in the village of Port Henry, and all along Lake Champlain, there are spots that are great for ice fishing. I was living, this was like 1981. I had just got done building an Adirondack guide boat with my dad. I raced it in the 90-miler from Old Forge to Saranac Lake. I placed first in the 2-man guide boat, and the beauty of it was my father and I built the boat that summer. And around Labor Day, there was a race from Old Forge to Saranac Lake, 3-day race, 8 carries, 90 miles of rowing, and 10 miles of carry. But that was a guide boat. I have another video, but this is my interpretation of that house. Because I'm very good at arithmetic and scaling, I can take just about any plan, an offset for a boat, and tell me what scale you want, and I'll scale it to it. I'm pretty good at it. This is where I grew up, in upstate New York. Here's the dome shanty again. Here's a truck that I drove back from Seattle. There's a car I bought in Seattle. You're going to see a lot of cars, but my was right here. This house was built around the Civil War. It was a duplex. When the mines were running, it was a duplex. They had it split down the middle of this house. And we lived on this side. This was our kitchen. There was 2 bedrooms upstairs. We had a bathroom upstairs. The people on this side had their bathroom downstairs, I think. This was a bigger unit because there was a gambrel roof on this side that gave them a couple of extra bedrooms upstairs, small bedrooms, and extra rooms here, where all we had on this side was this. But in around 1954, 55, the company that owned all the houses in town, whoever was living in the house, got right of first refusal to buy it. So my father and mother were renting. There was a big family over here that was renting. They put a price on the house for my father and mother. Well, they put a price on the house and it was up for grabs. And my father wanted it. He went over to the other fella over here and he says, "Do you want to buy it at that price?" And the fella had a big family. He didn't have the money. He says, "I can't afford it. Go for it. If you want to buy it, go ahead and buy the whole house." This was like in June. So my father bought, and my mother bought it at the price that the company offered it. And my father gave this fella over here, who was a Marine during World War II. He was in Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked. Plus, he went all through the Pacific as a Marine. My father came over and told him, "You have the next 6 months free rent. I'm going to give you 6 months free rent to get out of the house, and then I'm going to take it over." And that was around 1955. But a little bit on the house. Now we'll move on to the shanty. This is my dad. He was a mason, a carpenter. He knew it all. He was old enough to be my granddad in some societies that have quick turnovers. He would have been my grandfather. But he was my dad. And what we're looking at now is the bottom of the shanty. And this right here is a future runner for the shanty that you can drag it along the lake. It'll be up on rudders. This was I don't even remember. It might have been a 70-something. I don't even remember. 71 or 72 Dodge truck with a 318 with headers and cherry bomb mufflers. It was loud. I drove it all the way from Seattle to Mineville. About 3,000 miles. I brought it home. This is the neighborhood I grew up in upstate New York. These are all World War I houses. These were built by the federal government in World War I. My house, this house right here that I grew up in, used to all be farmland for about the first 40 years. And then the First World War come along, and the company built all these houses out of cement block for the workers. This is another car that I bought in Reno. This is a Peugeot 404. I bought it in Reno, and I towed it home without an engine in it. The engine was all apart in the back. There's a story for you right there. But there's the shanty in my parents' yard. This is a tow bar. It drops down, and it's hooked up to the runners on the bottom. This is an Adirondack guide boat that my father and I built before we built the shanty. We built this guide boat together. I couldn't have done it without him. He couldn't have done it without me. And this is a red marlin sailboard that I had that summer. I learned sailboarding in my 40s. I was in my 30s and 40s when I learned how to sailboard. About 35 in Plattsburgh, New York. Okay, this is my dad, okay, in front of the shanty. What I did is I took that plan, all the dimensions that were in that book, and I scaled it. I think I scaled at 1/4 scale. So if it was a 32 feet across, it was 8 feet across now. And what you're looking at is, this is out in the middle of Lake Champlain. These are your propane bottles for the propane heater. You keep them outside. They don't have to be inside taking up room. And these are the other shanties. When I built this shanty, people couldn't believe it, because everything up to that point was a square shanty. Like this one. This is what they call a four-holer. A four-holer because it has two guys sitting across from each other, and they each got 2 holes. Okay, it's a four-holer. I built a 6-holer, which was really odd for the time because nobody ever heard of a 6-holer, and nobody had ever seen a dome shanty. Here it is again. We're out on the lake. This is the middle of winter. It could be like the middle of February. And we could be at least a mile from shore. This is a nice sunny day. This is my nephew, Josh. He's like almost 40 now. He has his own family. He has children that have grown past what he is right here. He's probably 4, 5, or 6 right here. And now he has children that are 8 and 9. He has 4 children. So, but you had to put your name on it. So I had my name on it and where I was from and all these windows. But which is the difficult or the challenge with the shanty was insulating it around the bottom, because you had to stop the air from coming in underneath the shanty, where with a 4-holer it had runners on both sides, and you could put a board at the end of the runners on both sides and keep the air from getting in. But I had to take old carpeting and stuff like that and wrap it around it. But there we are. That's me right here with the auger, a hand auger, your Adirondack basket, woven basket, and here's your minnow bucket, another pack, another hand auger, and we're out in the middle of Lake Champlain, ice fishing. This was around 1981, 82, something like that. There's Josh again. And I started here. I had a piece of foam that I put, and that year I didn't have it filled with foam. That was like one of the first years we put it on the ice. I didn't really have have it together. There's Josh and his dad, Daryl. We were out there for the day. There's myself here. My friend Tommy, the tow bar. That's Port Henry, the town of Port Henry right there. There's the big water tower. Spring Street is right here. And then down, this goes down around Sandy Beach here. Okay? But this is the town of Port Henry, the village of Port Henry. The village. Here we are again. But these are all homemade shanties. Sometimes people make one a year, or they pride themselves in not having too much money in the shanties. These are all pretty nice right here. They look like they took time building them. But some shanties, they throw them together with cardboard, anything that'll stop the wind. And the thing of it is, you don't want to put too much money into a shanty, because it can go under the ice and you can lose it easy. So the thing of it is you need shelter, but you don't spend a lot. Here we are underneath the floor again. My dad. Here we are back out. I think this is my nephew and someone else. All the gear. And here's a tip up. What they did is, what you do now is when you're fishing for big fish like northern pike or something like that, instead of smelt, what you do is you put your bait fish on a tip up. Right here is a tip up. Okay? And you can set a line of them. You can set maybe 8 or 9 in a line, and with your auger you drill the holes, set them up with bait fish on them, like a minnow or a bait fish, and the flag, if they get hit by a fish, as soon as the fish starts pulling the reel, it'll release a flag. Okay? So what they're doing is, it's a nice warm day out on the ice, probably near the end of February, 1st of March. That's a good time for nice warm sunny days, and they're fishing for bigger fish. Now, people inside the shanty are fishing for smelt on hand lines, and then you've got your tip-ups going here. But you can see we're a lot farther from shore than what it looks like. That is going toward Cheever, the railroad tracks north of Port Henry, north of the marina, Port Henry Marina, and we're farther away from shore than it looks because of the telephoto lens effect. It sort of closes the distance. Here's some more. And you notice trucks out on the ice, vehicles driving out on the ice. When you're like in the shanty, when that vehicle gets within 200 yards of this village of shanties, all you hear is earthquakes going off. You can hear this truck coming from 200 yards away because the ice starts cracking. And as it gets closer and closer, it cracks more and more. But you might have as much as 8, 9, 10 inches of ice, and it'll support that truck. But you have to be careful because currents and frequent use of roads and current will take ice away. You take a current someday, and here, the truck is parked right next to the shanty. Right here, parked next to the shanty. Here's another one. Looks like somebody's drilling a hole out here for a tip-up. Like I said, this is the water tower. This is Spring Street in Port Henry. The Catholic Church, probably right about here. And then everything below, along the railroad tracks, between the railroad tracks and the village, is all this right here. But it's a lot of fun to ice fish. And it's a cheap entertainment. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to go out there. You get your beer, whatever, a sandwich to take out with you, and you spend the day out there with a radio and fishing. Here's a tip-up right here in the front. But I spent all winter. I was out there every day. The first winter that the shanty was built, my brother and I, he was drawing unemployment from the railroad. I was unemployed, and we spent almost every day in this shanty fishing for the first year that I built it. I wasn't employed yet. I didn't have a job. I was living at home, and I had money in the bank. But as I said, this 4-holer right here, there's a board that goes across. Your runners are here. You put the board across. You're out. No air infiltration. Where here at the shanty, it wasn't really thought out well for the runners. Here's my dad in front of the house. It's funny, he's wearing blue jeans. He didn't wear blue jeans. I don't think he started wearing blue jeans till he was like 70 years old. He always wore the gray khaki work pants. He prided himself in being a blue-collar worker. He didn't get fancy dressed up. You saw him with a gray khaki hat, gray khaki shirt, and gray khaki pants. So he lived in. Like I said, later on in life, he finally went to wearing jeans. But here we are again. Look at the colors. You can't believe what it's like to be out there. You got snowmobiles going out there. All kinds of activities. And people keep track of who's catching fish. And say if this guy in this shanty shows up at the local bar on the way home with 5 pounds with a pail full of fish, a 5-gallon bucket full of fish, and everybody goes, "Where'd you get those? In your shanty?" "I got them in my shanty today." The next day, everybody will move their shanty up here. These shanties are movable. You can move them in a couple of minutes. Okay, you break them away. First of all, you got to put them up on blocks to keep them sticking to the ice, and then but you can move them. You could move one every day if you wanted to, but whenever they find that the fish are hitting someplace, like my dome shanty right here, if they found out I caught a lot the night before, the next day I'll be surrounded by shanties. Okay, that's the way it works out there. There's my nephew again setting a tip up with his friend Tommy. Okay, here's an example of a shanty they didn't spend much money on. They have this tin stuff that comes out of the, it's a waste tin that's part of newsprint or cardboard, and they made a shanty out of that because it was free. It didn't cost them anything. So they won't lose anything if the shanty goes underwater. And shanties do go underwater. I'm having trouble with seeing my cursor. All this white here, hard background. Now, here's the way to do it. The new improved way to drill holes. That's an ice auger. You can drill 5 or 10 holes in a heartbeat with this, and have your tip ups all set up. And one thing about those hand crank augers, don't ever dull the bit. If you have, as long as you're careful with the cutting edge of those hand augers and you keep them protected with the plastic, they go through the ice really well. Now that might be a northern, the guy caught through the ice. This is the kind of fish you catch on tip-ups. And there's my nephew Jim heading off the ice with his auger, his pack on his back, got his bait pail or whatever. Here's me tending a tip-up that year. There's me again on coming off the ice with my gear. And here is, I want to point out, this car right here I bought in Reno for $400. Okay, and I towed that Peugeot station wagon home with this $400 Chrysler. It was a 68 Chrysler Newport 2-door, and it had a 383 4-barrel in it. High compression engine. The last year they built high compression engines was 68. I bought this car, I took it in for a tune-up, and the guy wanted to buy the engine from me. He souped up Chrysler Mopar engines, and he told me, he says, that was the last year of a high compression engine. And if you put high test leaded gas in this car, well, the power you had, they don't make them like that anymore. Well, anyway, we've got the floor done. We've got it up on runners. I've got 3 walls temporarily put into place. These 3 walls right here are going to match here. You got 3 walls. You got 3 hexagrams, 6-sided, and they're made up of 6 triangles. Everything is triangles in this thing. I think there was 6 times 4, 30. I think 4 times 6 is 24. There's 24 triangles. I had to make 24 triangles and bolt them together to make up 6 triangles made up 1 hexagon. And the top is a hexagon. And this is before I put the top on it and lifted it up and set it down on these walls. I just lifted this whole thing up, set it down on the walls, and bolted it in. There's a lot of work to this point because I had to do a lot of drafting. And scaling everything down to a quarter scale. Everything was scaled to quarter scale. there it is, my dad. I want to tell you, I was great up until the point where I had to fit these walls in. These walls that were left open, there's a hexagon sitting on this wall. Well, this wall and the one on the other side of it, there were 6 of them, and they all came to a point up like this. I butchered so much wood trying to get the angles right to get this wall to fit in there, and I just couldn't do it. I got sick of butchering wood. My dad was a master of the bevel square. He was a master of the bevel square. And that's when he jumped in to help me. He more or less watched everything. He helped me lift up. But this was all me up to the point where I had to put these 6 walls in and drove me up a wall. I mean, you have to know somebody. You have to think backwards. When you take a reading with your bevel square, now you got to think backwards. But here it is. Everybody had a wood pile because it's in the winter up there and we're upstate New York. There's my neighbor's wood pile. This wood pile is some of the best wood you could ever find to burn. It's got oak, birch, maple. It's all ash, all hardwood in that pile. Now, here's my dad's saw. This thing has cut more wood. He's got thousands of hours on that saw. You wouldn't believe the stuff, the furniture, the fine workmanship that he did over the years with this saw. But here's what it is. We're making progress. I still got to put the last hexagon or the trapezoid in here. But that trapezoid was going to have a window in it. And also the hexagram that sit on top, this had a skylight in it. You'll see later. But it's starting to come together after my father fit these walls in. This wall, and the other 4 like it just drove me nuts. I would have never got it done if he hadn't stepped in here. There's a skylight. Okay, as you're looking in the front door of the shanty, you're looking out the back door, and I put a couple of windows in the corner here so that you could always see behind you. I did a skylight up here to let light into the shanty. We always had light in it. Some shanties can get real dark because they don't have enough light in them. There's my dad standing on the porch. We just put sheeting on the bottom. There he is again. As you can see, the runners are pointed that way. We haven't got the door on yet, but we're moving along. It was a fun project. Here again, here's this car I brought home from Nevada and Seattle. This truck I bought and brought home from Seattle. The Peugeot I bought and brought home from Reno and Seattle. And then the little Dodge Omni in the first picture I bought in Seattle and brought it home. This fella right here, he had movie star looks. This is Albert. Him and I won the placed first in the 2-man guideboat competition on the first 90-mile Adirondack Canoe Classic. The first one they ever had, him and I entered my boat. All right? His father grew up and used to vacation in the Adirondacks. He was from down around Albany. But he spent his summers as a kid in the Adirondacks, and he got to know guideboats. Well, my father and I were building the guideboat outside. It was everybody in the neighborhood was talking about it. They were watching every day coming together. Well, this fellow's father heard that somebody in the neighborhood was building a guideboat. So he beat feet over there. This is a small hamlet. He beat feet over there, and as soon as he shook my father's hand, they were brothers, if you know what I mean. And this fella told his son, and this is Albert. He's got movies. He's got movie star looks. Good looking guy. And he's the one that convinced me that let's enter your boat in this first annual 90-mile race from Old Forge to Saranac Lake. It's a 3-day race. It's 80 miles of rowing, 10 miles of carry. We're going to camp overnight. And my parents will help. My dad will be part of it. He'll help us. But this is my dad and his son Albert in front of the shanty, because Albert and I had just finished the race that summer. This was like in the fall. I think I was doing this in the fall. And or the next spring, the next year, Albert came up to visit because he wanted to see, we had become friends. He wanted to see what I was up to, and this is what I was building. But we were all familiar. Okay, this is me and my father. Very proud of that picture. This was when it was brand new. It started getting discoloration. Now here we are. I had made these plates to cover the holes. You got these plate. I had to cover these holes. But whenever you brought refreshments, like soda or beer or anything else like that, you had these doors. You could pick it up and put the soda or your snacks or whatever down on the ice to keep it cold and then cover it up. And these holes right here, when you left the shanty at night, you covered all the holes to try to keep the heat in the shanty. Okay? And then the next morning you had to come out and you had to, sometimes if it wasn't too cold, if it wasn't a bad night, you didn't have to work too hard to skim the ice off the hole. Sometimes if you hadn't been if you had been away for a while, you had to go through the whole routine of chopping another hole. This is the first coat of anything I ever put on that OSB. I went out and bought some of this stain, and that's brand new. It's brand new. Okay, right there. There's another picture of it. And we're back to where we were. But I built this around 1981, 82, when I was living at home with my parents. They were both retired. My dad was retired. I was living in the West Coast. I called them up, getting sick of what I'm doing for a living. They said, well, come home. They said, we got room for you. If you want to move in, you can come in with us, stay with us. You know, and I had saved up my money. So I said, well, I'm going to go back east. And I went back east and I stayed here about 3 or 4 years. And I went to work for an airline. But I wanted to share this with people on YouTube. This is one of the projects that I made. I was very proud of it. It's one of a kind. I don't know if anybody else has ever done that with that book. But, and like I said, this is a window. So I had skylights up here in the top. I had windows here, a window on each side here, windows here, and then the 2 little peak windows in the back. And what these were, I had a lot of ideas for stuff. I took tuna cans and put them out here with like little sliding doors for ventilation. I really didn't know what I was doing. I'd never ice fished before. I never had a shanty. So I learned a lot. But all this stuff, the cans, the tuna cans, I might have had one up here. They went away. I learned how to do it. But it made a statement for poor Henry because nobody had ever seen. I had people, grown men coming in, and they'd sit down and they'd look at all these triangles and go, Jesus, what a job you did. How many triangles you got in this thing? You know, Everybody was curious, but like I said, this was before I started working for Brockway Air in Plattsburgh. The, the, right after I built this, I started working for a commuter airline in Plattsburgh. But anyway, I'm sharing this with YouTube. I hope you enjoyed it.